So I wanted to come and talk to you today and really tell you about my struggle with anxiety. So, like I said in my previous video, that I have had anxiety as long as I can remember. Um, it's not something that I realized I had. It wasn't something that I really knew what it was until I was older, a lot older, and it's something that I did not know how to manage into this year. So, my first time being able to label anxiety was I was at work, and at the time I worked at McDonald's, and I just was overwhelmed. I think it was just like maybe a stressful day at work. I'm pretty sure I probably had some other things going on, teenage drama or whatever, but I couldn't catch my breath. I was panicking, I was breathing really, really hard, and it scared my coworkers, it scared my friends, and they wanted to send me out 911. And I knew that I wasn't dying, but I didn't know what was happening. So I asked them to call my mother instead. And so I called my mom. She rushed up there. She was there in no time. And my mom, because I was still having trouble breathing, insisted that they called the paramedics. By the time the paramedics got me there, my breathing had calmed down. It became more more regular, and my mom really wanted me to still go to the hospital and get checked out. I went to the hospital via paramedics and got there. They took my blood, well, not drew my blood, did my blood pressure, the regular check-in stuff. And they said, oh, you had an anxiety attack. Follow up with your primary care doctor. That was it. After that, I never followed up with a doctor. At that time, I was like 17, 18, so I was pretty young. And it was never like, this is some information on anxiety, nothing. It was like, you have anxiety, and you had an anxiety attack, you'll be okay, follow your primary care doctor. Honestly, I wish that somebody had explained anxiety to me then. I think it would have saved me, 12, 13 years of trying to figure it out. As time progressed, of course, like anything that's not treated, it gets worse. As I went to college, I remember sometimes having anxiety, really bad anxiety in school when I had an exam, or when there was something major coming up, because I've always worked full-time and went to school, so those were, I would get panicked. I would have anxiety attacks. Sometimes they were never really, really bad until after I had my daughter. That's when I feel like they became worse. My stress level went up. I just had a baby. I was in a relationship that I knew I didn't want to be in, but I was in it for the sake of my child. Well, I thought I was in it for the sake of my child and to try to make a family work. Finances weren't right. It was just a lot going on. And that's when my anxiety got to its worst. One thing that I started doing, I think, once I had anxiety, once I started feeling like this anxious feeling, was I started holding things in more. I can be very outspoken, but I started kind of like more reserving my feelings, or not saying things to hurt other people's feelings. And that was more so it wouldn't turn into an argument, or it wouldn't turn into a bigger deal than what it was. So with that, I internalized that. I started feeling more anxious. I started also assuming things, because I'm not actually vocalizing how I felt, so I'm assuming how the other person felt because they're actually assuming how I feel because I'm not actually telling them. So I remember one time, so me and my daughter's father finally broke up. We still lived in the same home, and I dropped my daughter off at daycare and I pulled up and he was home. And my chest was tight, my breathing, got shallow, and I just felt like so uneasy, like, oh my God, I don't want to go in here and have any interaction with him. I don't want it to become an argument. I just want this situation to be over. I just want to move. I just want to, be done with it. And I sat in my car for maybe about an hour, just avoiding it, then trying to not only avoiding going and having to have any type of conversation with him, also just trying to get myself together. I was crying. I was so worked up, but nothing had physically happened. We didn't have any conversation that morning before I left the house. We didn't have any conversation, I don't even think the night before. It was just, we were in such a bad place that I felt like I just had, lost myself. I just didn't know what was to come, and I just felt very lost, very alone. I never really expressed my feelings to my friends and to my family. I just kind of kept everything in. Like I said before, I held my emotions in because I just didn't want to hear people's judgment. I didn't want to hear people's opinion. I didn't want to hear, you tell people you're going through something, they want to give you this. I didn't want any of that. I just really wanted to be alone. And I felt like I was alone in the process, even though I know, my family had been through breakups, my friends had been through breakups. I just felt alone, and I do think a lot of that comes from, once again, internalizing, keeping everything in, bottling up my feelings. So, I sat in the car. I don't, when I finally got myself together to go in the house, nothing happened. We didn't have an argument. We didn't say anything. But it was just the anticipation of things happening. Then that is something that I grew to do more and more as my anxiety got worse. So now, if I'm feeling very anxious, my anxiety hasn't developed into I will physically break out in hives because my body has lived in a state of panic for so long that when I'm very upset or very worked up, my arms will break out in hives, my neck, my face, and because my body now has a physical response to this emotion that I've gone through for so long. What I can say now is, since I've learned to kind of get my anxiety under control some, I don't have those responses as much, but it does still happen. I do take a antihistamine, Allegra or whatever, and sometimes that helps because, it just helps with hives regardless, but I have stress-induced hives. I self-diagnosed myself with that because I know my body. I've learned my body over the years, and when my stress levels are high, my body will physically react to it. I have been going to therapy for my anxiety, and I also had some. I also was depressed for a little bit, and I started going to therapy for that. And my first therapist, she was really, really good. We connected a lot on a very personal level, and I'm glad that my first experience with therapy was someone that I could connect with. We would have conversations about, whatever I had going on, so, I felt comfortable with her. Whereas, and then she ended up leaving, very abruptly. She ended up going out on, medical leave and then not coming back. And then I got started looking around for another therapist, interview with this one, talk to this one lady. I felt like it was nothing she could tell me. like we couldn't relate. It was nothing personal for us to relate. And because I had such a personal, not personal, because I didn't know her business, but just that connection with my first therapist, the second therapist, I was like, nah, this lady she's for me. My first therapist was a white woman, and then the second one was a white woman, and then I just started teletherapy, January of 2019, and I did one session with her. The lady was actually super nice, but that was the day I found out I was starting my new job, so I knew my insurance and everything was gonna switch. So I was like, oh, it was nice to meet you. Very brief conversation went on, and then around, I think it was like May or June of last year, I found another therapist, and I decided this time that I wanted a black woman therapist. I found her online. I believe it was through Therapy for Black Girls. And in the beginning, because I had such a comfortable relationship and a communication with, like, a back and forth dialogue with my first therapist, this therapist, I had a hard time fully connecting with her and opening up to her. But when I went for the purpose of, I have anxiety and I need to get to the root of it, because everything comes from somewhere. I have anxiety and I really want to get to the root of my anxiety. So that was my focus for therapy. When I went to therapy the first time, I was more depressed, even though I was suffered from, I was depressed, and I was like, I went in like, I want to work on my depression and my anxiety. But this time I was like, no, I want to get to the root of my anxiety, because I no longer want to struggle with anxiety. Well, not no longer struggle, but I want to have more control over it, and for it not to have control over me. And over the last year, we have really worked on figuring out where my anxiety come from through different activities she had me do. I also journal a lot, and I do a lot of self-reflecting. So, like, I have multiple journals. Even just this year alone, we're in October, I think I'm on my 4th or 5th journal. I write a lot. The way I express my feelings is through writing. I'm not someone who will always verbally tell you how I feel, but I can send you a 10-page text message saying da 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 da. But sometimes vocally or verbally, it comes off confusing, or just not the way I would always want it to come off. So I do better with writing. But because I write, I do a lot of self-reflecting, and I do a lot of, okay, this happened, and how did it make me feel? And I start writing more about my feelings and more about my stress level. So writing had, started to help me to break the wall down with my anxiety and, like, start to understand it myself. But once I got to a certain point, it was like, okay, this is, I feel anxious. I feel anxious when I have to express myself, or when it's like some type of conflict, and I don't feel like conflict, especially with conflict with my loved ones. I don't mind conflict with outside, but conflict with my loved ones is very hard for me. Though just different things that I realized, that took a part in me having anxiety on my own. I was like, okay, but what happened to me for these things to be the cause of my anxiety? So what I've realized is part of my anxiety comes from my struggle with reading as a child. Because I struggle with reading, it like kind of made me nervous to read out loud, read in front of people, and that nervousness kind of just continued throughout my life. Like, I am more comfortable now with speaking, and, like, even in front of a large group of people, or I can do that now. But it took a while. It took my confidence to be built up, because as a kid, people say little things, and they can say something small, or somebody will snicker about something completely irrelevant, but in your mind you process that as, oh, they're laughing at me. So I really struggled with my reading. I think that was one of the things that really triggered me to start feeling anxious, because I remember as a kid when a teacher would be going around calling on people, I'd be like, oh my God, please don't call on me, please don't call on me, please don't call on me. Or I would read the passage beforehand, and then when they called on me, I would read it again, out loud, and this time I wouldn't stutter over it or, say a word backwards or anything like that. Another thing I think caused my anxiety is the fact that as a kid, my mother, she was a traditional old school mother. Kids don't really, they never really taught me how to express myself and through her words or express myself. So I realized that, like, I never said, like, oh, this is bothering me, or this happened and I didn't like it, or just those things to feel like, to validate my emotions. I never felt like my emotions or my feelings were validated as a kid. So as an adult, I struggled with that. It was like a battle of trying to understand what exactly, like, how do I express myself? Is my feelings, like, is the way I'm feeling, is this, like, right? And now that I'm an adult and I understand feelings and I understand myself, I'm like, my feelings, well, your feelings are right. Feelings aren't facts, but that's how you feel in the moment. So it's not that my feelings need to be validated now, because this is how I feel. It may be right, it may be wrong, but this is how I feel. And so I think, like, those two things really, really played on me as I grew up. And it just spiraled, and it got worse as I grew older. And now that I understand it, I feel like my anxiety is better. During the pandemic, I felt like for the first time I was actually at peace. I wasn't in a state of panic. I wasn't in a state of thinking of what was next, what was to come. I was at peace in the moment. And when you live for over 20 years of worrying about the future and to actually live in a moment, it's a good feeling. It's like, I just was sitting there and I was like, wow, I never felt this feeling before. I never felt this calm before. And that's when I was like, oh, I finally got control over my anxiety. Like, this feeling is so surreal. Now, lately, because I am doing so much, I'm relocating out of state. I'm still working full time. I'm still trying to, like, spend time with my friends now that I've decided to relocate. It has been stressful. The last few weeks of my life has been stressful. I'm looking for a home in another state. So, like, I don't know if any of you ever relocated, but I definitely, it's stressful. Moving is stressful, packing is stressful, and to be doing it and going out of state to a city where I don't have any friends or family, it makes me anxious. But what I have learned to do, what I've dealt with over the last couple of weeks, is just, like, doing what I can. I'll look at some houses, look them up. Okay, nothing here today. Okay, that's it. I don't worry about, so what if a house don't come? Because I know that everything that I've stressed over in the past has always worked out in my favor. So it's like, now I'm learning to live in a moment, accept things for what they are, and just really, really be present. I think that is something that I have had, a lot of, I've never really done. I've never been present in the moment. I'm always thinking about what's next, what's to come. And to be present is so much better. That level of stress of what's next or what's to come is something that I am glad that I finally overcame. And for people who don't struggle with anxiety, they don't understand that the thought process of what's in the future isn't just one thought. It is a spiraling of thoughts that you can be thinking about everything under the sun, but you're in the moment with your friends and your family, but your mind is not there. You're somewhere else. You are mentally preparing for tomorrow because you got a test, or you're mentally preparing for your vacation. But in the moment, you're around amazing people and you don't even get to enjoy it. And then when you walk away from it, you don't take away much from it. Oh, I was with my friends, but I can't tell you 4 or 5 good things that happened during that time, because during most of the time my mind was in the future. So I just really wanted to share, how my anxiety has been. And then I'm going to go into more details of like some of the physical and emotional effects of anxiety, and then the things that I have done to like calm my mind, relax, and different things I've used besides therapy to calm my thoughts and myself. So those videos are to come. Thank you.